Let's start the debate. The first question goes to Andrew Scheer, and the theme will be the economy. Nova Scotians are among the highest taxed people in Canada. The current Prime Minister says a carbon tax is needed to encourage people to innovate, to reduce carbon emissions, and grow the Canadian economy. What is your plan with respect to carbon pricing and the economy?
The first job of an Andrew Scheer government will be to repeal the carbon tax. Thank you. Every single time the Liberals are faced with a problem, their answer is a new tax. And you know what bothers me is how quickly the conversation around carbon taxing became about carbon pricing. When the market sets a price, it's based on supply and demand and cost of production, and you as consumers have a choice to pay it or not. When the government sets it, imposes it, and enforces its collection, it's a tax. It's not a price. It will kill jobs in Canada. It will hurt low-income Canadians. What Justin Trudeau and Gerald Butts wants to do is export the mess in Ontario to the rest of Canada.
Thank you. Maxime Bernier.
You know, I don't like taxes, and I don't like carbon tax. So for sure, under a Bernier government and a Conservative government of Canada, we won't have a carbon tax. I think it is hurting the economy. As you know, some provinces, they have a carbon tax, and it cannot solve the problem. So what we must do is to help the entrepreneur to invest in the economy for new technology. So we are, our emission, it's only 1.2% of carbon. So it is there, but we can do better, and with more innovation, more investment in the technology. So the best way to stimulate the economy is with private investment, and I have a plan for that. You can count on me. We won't have a carbon tax. Thank you.
Stephen Blaney.
Well, to repeat in a more colorful way, they say you can put the lipstick to a pig and it's still a pig. Well, you can add green to tax and it's still a tax. So no, there's no need to have such a tax in Canada, but we need to provide low-cost energy to our small businesses. That's why I'm promoting hydroelectricity, nuclear energy. There's some here in the Atlantic. And also, we need to lower taxes on our small and medium businesses because it's not government who creates jobs. We all know that. It's businesses, and we need to create this environment. On that, I agree with you, Maxime. No, we're all conservative after all. Thank you.
Kevin O'Leary.
We already have a shining example of why all this green initiative doesn't work on a tax basis. It's called the province of Ontario. $308 billion in deficit, much of it as a result of failed green policies. No carbon tax is necessary. Many people don't realize this. Canada has 1.2 billion acres of wetlands and forest. I'm an environmental studies student. What happens is these are carbon sinks. They absorb 2.1 to 2.6 tons of carbon a year. Canada actually absorbs 4 times more carbon than it emits. Canada is not the problem. What we have to do is simply provide goals for industries to achieve in terms of emissions and let them innovate. Leave the capital on their balance sheets. Leave the capital on their income statements. Don't give money to government when it's unnecessary. We could shut down the entire economy of Canada and it wouldn't make a difference. We have to sell our technology to the Chinese and the Indians. That's how we'll solve emissions.
Kellie Leitch.
So first, I'd like to welcome Kevin to the Conservative Party, and I'd like to welcome him back to Canada. Now, there's been some news stories recently about non-Conservatives joining the party to stop me becoming leader. I just never expected to be sitting beside one of them when I was running and sitting at this debate. Now, on the economy, we know what doesn't work. Justin Trudeau's plan. Bigger government, more rules, more regulations, more money to pay for it. Income taxes, payroll taxes, and now a carbon tax. As I said in May, I will abolish the carbon tax immediately on becoming Prime Minister. I have a budget plan, 6 points, focused on making sure our economy will be moving forward how it needs to. A balanced budget, reducing the deficits, making sure we control public sector benefits and pay. We need the private sector to grow and the government to shrink, and I'll be abolishing the carbon tax. Thank you.
Michael Chong.
Thanks. I think we need to get real about this issue. The fact of the matter is climate change is happening, and it's a serious threat. The last 16 of the last 17 years have been the hottest on record, and the last 3 years have been the hottest on record. And here's another reason why we have to get real about this. If we're going to take on Justin Trudeau in 2019 and win in Canada's cities, in British Columbia, and in many other regions of this country, we need to have a credible policy to reduce emissions. I'm the only candidate here on stage with a credible policy to reduce emissions that will both protect the economy and the environment. My plan is the only plan that has been reviewed and publicly praised by 4 economists, 4 university economists here in this country. It's also a plan that has the support of former Prime Minister Harper's former head of policy in the PMO, Mark Cameron. It's a real plan to reduce emissions that is based on the British Columbia model. It begins with one of the largest income tax cuts in Canadian history.
Andrew Saxton.
Thank you. And it's wonderful to be in Halifax tonight. Thank you for coming out, so many people. I think this is the biggest crowd we've had at one of these events, so thank you. It shows the spirit is alive here in Halifax. As Prime Minister of Canada, the first thing that I'm going to do is axe the tax. Because I tell you, the carbon tax is not going to reduce emissions. The only thing it's going to do is shift emissions south of the border to the United States and take tens of thousands of jobs with it. I will get on an airplane. I will fly to Washington. I will meet with President Trump for a harmonized solution to climate change. Because Canada can't go it alone. We have to have a North American solution to climate change. I will focus on creating jobs. In 2010 in Vancouver, we had the Own the Podium program, which brought home more gold. I'm going to make sure that we have an Own the Podium program for innovation and technology that's going to bring home jobs to the Maritimes. That's going to be my first plan as Prime Minister.
Brad Trost.
Let's be clear. A carbon tax is a tax on driving, it's a tax on heating, and it's a tax on lighting your homes. It's wrong. But not just a carbon tax, cap and trade, another form of the same thing, is wrong. Backdoor regulations is wrong. And I'm the only candidate who's not only opposed to carbon tax, I'm opposed to those other 2 forms of backdoor carbon taxing. Instead of spending money on climate change plans where we are literally planning on shipping $2.5 billion overseas out of Canada, we need to take that money and say to local Conservative candidates in the next election, you decide the local environmental initiatives that are important to you. Be it water in your constituency, be it cleaning up a mine, be it something like that. Taxes must go down. Taxes do not need to go up on anything, particularly not on heating and driving and lighting our homes.
Erin O'Toole.
Thank you. I say often the problem with global climate change is not the single senior widowed person living in Timberley or Truro heating their home with home heating oil that will now pay more as a result of Justin Trudeau's tax. The problem is also not the small business that I toured in Fall River doing aerospace work, trying to compete against companies in Massachusetts that will not have a carbon tax. So this tax will not only kill jobs, it's making that single senior or the family struggling to pay bills pay for Justin Trudeau's plan. I oppose the carbon tax and always have. The difference is I don't just say that, I say what I'll do. I'll look at depreciation of all investments by large emitters in reducing their carbon footprint. I'll also, over a 10, 15, and 20-year plan, reduce their taxes if they can get their GHG emissions down. Conservatives lower taxes, we don't raise them.
Chris Alexander.
My policy would also be very simple. No federal carbon tax ever. There's no room for ambiguity on this. It's not just that it doesn't get the job done. It's not just that it raises the cost of everything and the cost of doing business in Canada, sending jobs in every sector elsewhere. It is a regressive tax that hits our most vulnerable populations, seniors, young people on low incomes, families struggling to make ends meet, Aboriginal communities hardest. And that is totally unfair and unjust. And it does the opposite for innovation to what this two-faced government in Ottawa is telling us. It will kill innovation. It will discourage energy producers in Canada from applying the technological solutions, the new processes, the Canadian way of having success in energy that we know will get the job done.
Thank you. Lisa Raitt.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rob. First of all, I have to tell you that this moment right now, being home in Nova Scotia and seeing so many tartan scarves out there is worth being in this competition. So thank you so very much for welcoming me home, and I appreciate it. You know, I want to grow the economy. I know that you have to grow the economy to create the jobs. And there are two ways to do it. You can have low competitive taxation schemes, which is really important, so no carbon tax. And the other thing you need to have is sound fiscal circumstances. And Trudeau's government is taking us down a path that guarantees you there's not going to be a sound economy in 2019. Nova Scotia has punched above its weight in reducing emissions. And you did it without putting in a carbon tax, right? You did it. Because we get things done in Atlantic Canada. We get things done in Nova Scotia. We use our minds. We use our intellect. We'll do it again. No to the carbon tax.
Deepak Obhrai.
Thank you. First, I want to make some clarification. The media today was saying that I was not going to be here. I want to assure you, I'm not a ghost. I'm the real Deepak Obhrai over here. But just let me say this. We are, as Kevin said, we are only 1.5% of emissions of global emissions around the world, a very minuscule. Therefore, carbon tax is not really a solution to Canada. And for my environmental policies, please go to my website, deepackage.com. Now, let me get back to the main thing, okay? Except for the Liberals and the dippers, we all know that an economy, strong economy, is a balanced budget, a fair taxation system, and a regulatory regime that encourages investment and strong internal and external trade. So in my first 2 years in the government, I will reduce the expenditure by 2% while making sure jobs are not lost. To encourage investment, I will reduce the capital gains tax rate.
Pierre Lemieux.
Well, thank you, everyone, for being here.
Rob, I gave you money, man.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. It's really good to see such a warm and hospitable crowd here in Nova Scotia. And I want you to know that I am 100% opposed to a carbon tax. It will inflict financial pain and suffering on every single Canadian with no noticeable effect. A lot of pain with no gain. It will suck money out of the economy and therefore will lead to job losses. If you want to reinforce job creation, we need to lower taxes, and what will you do with your money? You will spend it in the economy and help create jobs. The carbon tax does the exact opposite. And I think we need to remember two important points. Canada's contribution to the world level of greenhouse gas emissions is less than 2%. The other thing is our Canadian companies and our employees are competing against the Americans. They will not have a carbon tax that will place us, our economy, and our jobs at a distinct disadvantage. We must kill the carbon tax.
Finally, Rick Peterson.
Rob, thank you everybody for being here. My wife Irish and I, coming from the West Coast, I grew up in Grand Prairie, and I just want to, Grand Prairie, Alberta. And on behalf of Alberta and Canada, I want to thank all of you for sending your sons, your daughters, your cousins, and your uncles, and your aunts for supporting the infrastructure and the oil and gas industry in Canada, which has been the lifeblood of Canada. There will be no carbon tax under Peterson as a Prime Minister, but what there will be is finally relief for you and your families, because out of all 14 people up here, I'm the only one with a plan to ease your tax load. Under my administration, everybody's federal income tax rate will be a 15% flat rate. Everybody who runs a small business here will have a 0% corporate tax. Create jobs, drive the economy, and let's get Atlantic Canada back on its feet, creating jobs and wealth that you all deserve here at home. Thank you.
Thank you all for your answers. And now for some rebuttals. The first is Erin O'Toole. 30 seconds.
Thank you very much. As I've said many times, I welcome all voices into this race, even people that used to be in other parties. So my question is for Mr. O'Leary. For many years, you supported the Trudeau-style carbon tax. Right up until the Vancouver Convention, you were on the record countless times supporting the carbon tax. I'm wondering when you changed your position on the carbon tax.
Next is Andrew Scheer.
In a recent interview, Kevin O'Leary said that while he opposed a carbon tax, his solution would be for anyone that didn't reduce emissions that they would go to jail. So I just want to put on the record right now that not only am I opposed to a carbon tax, but I am opposed to a carbon jail.
Stephen Blaney.
You know, I come from Lévis in front of Quebec, where we lost last Sunday 6 members of our community. And of course, I want to condemn all form of violence. But I also want to share something that is very Christian coming from a Muslim, from an imam. We must forgive, but we must not answer hatred. We must not answer hatred to hatred, but we have to clean our soul and watch our words that fuel hatred. I believe that as politicians, we have a moral responsibility to talk of those issues.
Michael Chong.
Thank you. I'm going to defend Kevin O'Leary here on his previous position on the carbon tax. A carbon tax is the most conservative way to reduce emissions. It is the most economically efficient way, the cheapest way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. There is no doubt about that. I don't support the Trudeau government's plan on this, but I do support the British Columbia model, which is a revenue-neutral carbon tax that's been used to introduce the deepest income tax cuts in their history that has allowed the economy to grow the fastest among all 10 Canadian provinces.
Thank you. Deepak Obhrai.
Thank you. I just want to finish where I was carrying on. So
You were rudely cut off, Deepak.
Capital gains 25% down, and for those earning over $500,000, the income tax will increase from 34 to 35%, and I'm sure my good old friend here, the reality star actor, wouldn't mind paying the extra few dollars for the health care. Thank you.
Rick Peterson. Rick Peterson.
I just want to let Michael know I'm from Vancouver, Michael, and I can tell you that the carbon tax there is not revenue neutral. If you are a 28-year-old welder working up on Site C up in Dawson Creek, you don't have SkyTrain, you don't have bike lanes, you got to drive to work in your truck. It's not neutral to you. And I can tell you that the provincial government there, it's such a good idea that they stopped it. They stopped increasing the escalating price that you have. It does not work. It does not work for BC. It will not work for Canada under my leadership as your Prime Minister. Thank you.
Andrew Saxton.
Mike's not. There's Mike's on. My good friend Michael is very happy to say that he's got 4 economists that are supporting his economic plan. If I had 4 economists supporting my economic plan, I'd go back to the drawing board and rewrite it. I mean, when was the last time you saw a wealthy economist? I mean, really, they're in their ivory towers, sipping tea and coffee and talking about theory, not practice. The carbon tax doesn't work.
Chris Alexander.
Not to finish this part of the debate, this question, without reminding ourselves as Conservatives how important it is for us not only to stand against carbon tax, but to stand in favour of increasing Canada's low-cost energy output in every field. We need to build Energy East. We need to expand production of oil and gas in Nova Scotia, in and off Nova Scotia, in and off Newfoundland and Labrador. And we need to become a low-cost producer in every field.
Thank you. That concludes question 1.